In the late 1970s, I was the editor of a gay liberation newspaper in Boston called the Gay Community News. And we were Lambda legal plaintiffs in a suit against the federal government. And we won. And our lawyer was Nan Hunter.
Oh my goodness.
And then in 1980, and of course Nan's office is now down the hall from Paul Smith's office, yes, at Georgetown. And then in 1980, the late Tom Stoddard and I and Nan joined Lambda's first national board of directors. And so in the 40 years that I have been a part of Lambda Legal's community, I've never been more convinced, and it's so obvious of the critical role that our legal community, Lambda, and our allies and colleagues play in the fight to advance and protect our rights. A few years ago, when marriage equality was achieved, many in our community thought that we had won, that our work was largely complete. And of course, today we know that's not the case. And although, as has been mentioned, we've made so much progress, much more progress than most of us ever anticipated we would see in our lifetimes, that legal equality is now in jeopardy, and it's under attack at the federal level and in the states. And the right is going after the most vulnerable among us with the full cooperation of our government leadership. They're going after young people, people living with HIV, transgender people, and as had been mentioned, this June we marked the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. And it helped force me to remember that ultimately we are a community of activists, and that we've been here before. In 1976, Anita Bryant toured this country to rally for discrimination against us. And what did our community do? More gay people, more LGBT people came out of the closet, rallied, and organized. Then in 1986, the Hardwick case has already been mentioned. When that came down in 86, to say that it was okay for the police to come into our bedrooms and arrest us in our beds, people stepped up. And that year, more money and more volunteer lawyers came forward to work with Lambda Legal than ever before in its history. And I think the reaction to that case, was it any coincidence that it was 1986 that finally, after decades, the New York City Council passed the non-discrimination bill in New York? And these were juxtaposed against each other at a same moment in time where our community was waking up and more people were coming out and getting angry. So then AIDS hit us hard, and from 1982 to 1996, before protease inhibitors were introduced, our friends and lovers were dying, and we were in a war. Our government made it clear that we're a disposable population, and elected officials and much of the media demonized us. The lesbian community was over here, gay men were over there, and we were not always very much of a together movement. But in that moment, lesbians and gay men did come together. Our movement exploded, with more people coming out of the closet, stepping up, becoming active, and giving money. And our lives depended on it in that war. And then in 1998, when Matthew Shepard was murdered, there was another explosion. As we not only marched in the streets, that was the first gay demonstration organized by email. We marched in the streets, but more and more people volunteered at our community's organizations. At the time, I was the executive director of New York's LGBT Community Center, a big building. There were so many people who wanted to organize and meet, we had to go to the owners of the gay bars throughout the village and say in the early evenings, could we hold organizing meetings in bars because the center was full. That had never happened before. That was our community's response to Matthew Shepard's murder. The list of examples goes on, as in 2000, when the Supreme Court said James Dale couldn't be a Boy Scout. More people stepped up in our community and became activists because they saw themselves in James Dale and said, yes, I belong to this community. I have to do something. Each time this has happened to us, members of our community have come under attack. we're viewed as an easy target, and our community has fought back, and we've grown stronger. And Lambda, with the ACLU, is always out there in the front, and we work closely with James. We work with high, or we want to be high. It's a dispiriting time, and there are a lot of days we get so discouraged we don't want to get out of bed. And again, I'm reminded that we queer people, we are a resilient people. We're a movement with a spine. And I've been so inspired to hear Susan and Hai talk tonight and think about reaching across to our adversaries and how the future is ours. And so that'll help me get out of bed. But I really think that this queer movement has a spine. We are a tough bunch. We get knocked down. We're going to get back up. And together, all of us together, we're going to win. And I really appreciate the ABA for taking this time to incorporate Stonewall 50 long after June into your program and recognize this struggle that we'll all be fighting for the rest of our lives. So thank you very much.